When we look at collaboration and communication in the modern dental office, we note a couple of things. The first is that there has been, and always has been, significant collaboration between the dentist, the specialist, and the dental lab around a specific patient treatment. I think in the modern dental office and where we see digital dentistry going is really in including now, from the dental lab's perspective, also an electronic or a digital design center, a milling center, and of course from a diagnostics perspective, electronic radiologists as well, digital radiographs, and so on. The challenge that this plays as we continue to get more into digital dentistry, when we look at, oral scanners and digital scanners from the lab's perspective, we start to recognize that there's now an increasing amount of digital data about the patient. And so what I want to talk about today is how do we balance the fact that there is so much more digital data with the necessity of doctor-patient confidentiality, a lot of which is held in the HIPAA documents. So many of you, I'm sure, have heard about the high-tech rules, and I guess more proximate to September is the omnibus rule, which gets enacted in a few weeks, or I guess enforced in a few weeks. So this is a natural and expected clash, lots of digital data and the needs of doctor-patient confidentiality. The challenge that we have is when we're communicating and collaborating, there's a difference in the real-world aspects of HIPAA and the electronic aspects of HIPAA. And so what I'm going to focus on today are a few of the things that I see when I am in dental offices around sharing sensitive information using email or using Dropbox or systems like it to share patient data and backup and encryption, and where the challenges are with that. The first point being, I'm seeing quite a bit of patient information being sent through email. This is against the law. The challenge that people have is understanding why. And so in order for me to send an email, what happens is, even if my system is secure, in order to get it to your system, it has to pass through a number of middleman servers. And these middleman servers, at any step in that passing of information, can be compromised. The internet was in fact designed for sharing the information, not necessarily for secure sharing of information. And that's why we see this type of issue. So the dentist here has a duty to not use email in order to maintain that confidentiality, because it can be compromised at any location. Now, there is a confusion around email, so I want to address this head on, because if you do search the American Medical Association about using email to discuss protected patient information, what you see is that, yes, in fact, that it says that you can use it. The guidance on that, though, one of the key words here is reasonable and appropriate safeguards. And when we dig into what those words mean, and you look at the laws around those words, here's what comes up. In fact, I won't go through that one. I'll summarize that. You can only use email if the patient has consented to use of email, verification that the email has received its recipients, and that you verify that those recipients are actually receiving them. You de-identify the information. You transmit the minimum necessary, encrypt and decrypt the information, which I'll tell you is very difficult. And you do not email sensitive information or diagnosis. And so the interesting thing around this is, what can you actually include? Because if you stripped all of that particular information from an email, it's probably lost the value. So when we look at services that we all use, what I see a lot of is Gmail, Hotmail, Outlook, Apple Mail, and so on. The challenge with these is none of these is going to be HIPAA compliant unless you've got some very specific measures in place that enable compliance, which I would tell you I've never seen in a dental office. So this is a challenge that everyone here really needs to concern themselves with. Let's go on to my next big point, something I see a lot of. I see Dropbox being used for sharing digital radiographs, I would say many times a week. And there's variations of this. There's SkyDrive, there's Google Drive. I can tell you that those are not HIPAA compliant for a few reasons. Dropbox, SkyDrive, and Google Drive do not have auditability. Words auditability require, in the HIPAA laws, that every access of that data, everyone who accesses it, needs to be recorded. And that record of who has access to it needs to be available. If that patient ever comes back and says, hey, someone accessed my images, the dentist now who took that consent that they could take the images now has to come up with that list of, a log really, of everybody who has looked at that information. Automatic log off. That doesn't exist in a lot of those, in the three systems, Dropbox, SkyDrive, and Google Drive. There's basic privacy issues. For those of you who don't know, Google Drive reads everything that you put into it so that they can serve you advertising. The same is true with Gmail. Obviously not secure. There's also no stated data disposal and no encryption on those services. So again, the challenge here, or increasing the challenge, is the fact that none of those systems actually claims that they are HIPAA compliant. So you want to be very careful, because they are saying, hands off, do not use us for HIPAA or for patient information. The last topic I'm going to talk about very quickly here is backing up patient data. Now, there's a few nuances here because there's more than just a simple backup that's required. First of all, you need to have off-site backup. There's a lot of good systems out there that are available on the internet that are designed specifically for backing up patient health information, private health information. Usually means that it is encrypted. In every single case that I've seen, that information has to be encrypted. There has to be data access and recovery testing, so that we always want to make sure that whatever's being backed up can be, in fact, be recovered. And as part of the HIPAA regulations, you have to ensure that not only can you save it encrypted remotely, but that it can also be brought back if needed. And this is a real example of a doctor that I was working with. I've anonymized all the names, of course, but don't use any of those systems.
So, Rohit, I wanted to ask you an interesting question. When I talk to some dentists, especially now that the information is being held by servers in the cloud, in companies in the cloud, instead of in their office, I think some dentists feel that if there's a breach, that the cloud company or the server company is responsible and the dentists are off the hook. Given that you're an attorney and have been through HIPAA, can you talk a little bit about really who's responsible? Is it just the cloud vendor, or does the dentist also have some responsibility?
Yeah, great question, Mike. In my experience, the vendor, as long as the agreements are in place, and there's specific agreements, like the business associates agreement, most of that liability will end up transferring to the cloud computing company. But you have to choose wisely. You have to make sure that you're using the right cloud-based company. But having said that, there's no way that that dentist is going to avoid that. Because while that process gets going, while the process of discovery is occurring, all of the dentist is the person who took that consent. And because they've taken consent, they're the first point really for that patient to address and to begin proceedings.